Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Kevin, and this is Pumpkin Harvest Ministry. Again, I am not an ordained minister. I don't claim to be one, but God has called me to come on every night and bring the good word to help light up this dark world of ours. So, tonight is going to be another of two parts. There's far too much to cover for just one night. I think it would be too much, and it would be better to break it up. So, tonight we're going to talk about marriage, specifically husbands and wives. So, let's go ahead and pray, and let's get this started. Lord, thank you for tonight. Thank you for another wonderful day. Thank you so much for your blessings. Please bless every single person that's here tonight and continue to help them shine and bring the light into this dark world. Lord, thank you so much for everything you've done for us today and this week and for things to come. Thank you so much for sending your son down for us. And it's in your son's name that we pray. Amen. All right, so tonight we are going to be specifically on the husband topic. What does it mean to be a husband, according to the Bible and according to what God's plan was for us? So tonight we're going to jump into quite a few different verses, but once I read them, I'll break it down and hopefully make it a little more understandable, a little easier to understand for you. First off, we're going to jump into the very beginning. This is Genesis 2, verse 24. It says here, "That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh." So what this means is, what God is telling you is that when you become married, you are now joined to your wife. You're no longer a part of the family structure for father, mother, and children. You're now part of the family structure of husband and wife. So you would leave one family structure and join another. So now you are the head of the household like your father was, and like our father is, and they become one flesh. So they'll become one united person. Next, we're going to jump into Ephesians 5. It's verse 25 through 33. This one's a long one, but it is very important. So let's read through it and then let's break it down. "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body, just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband." So let's start at the beginning and break this down a little bit. It says, "Husband loves your wife as Christ has loved the church and gave himself up for her." So he is comparing the husband-wife structure to himself, to Jesus, and the church, which is his word, his body. So with this, it's saying that you basically are, you work off of each other. You are one, again, it said in here, you are one flesh. So husbands have to treat their wives with respect and love, and make sure that you are presenting her in a way that is clean or without any blemish, that is holy and blameless. So you are to lead your wife to God. You are to lead a godly life. It says, just as Christ does for the church, for we are members of his body. So again, not only do we have the one to follow, which is God and Jesus, and they break it down to how it was back then to make it understandable for them, which was the church was everything to them. So we are members of the body, which is of Christ, which is of the church. So it goes over the leaving your mother and father and becoming one flesh. And it says you must also love your wife as he loves himself. So a lot of us really have a lot of good self-love. Sometimes it's a bit too much and can come across a little arrogant, but what they're saying here is that you are to love your wife as you love yourself. No one is going to harm yourself. You're going to feed your body. You're going to nourish your body. You're going to grow with God. You're going to read. And that is something that you have to do with your wife as well. Help her to grow. Help her to grow spiritually. Make sure that you are taking care of her so she can take care of you as well. Next, we're going to jump into 1 Peter chapter 3, verse number 7. This one here says, husbands, in the same way be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect, as the weaker partner, and as heirs of you with a gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. So here it's breaking it down and saying that you have to be considerate of one another. You have to think of others as you also think of yourself. So when you make decisions, and you make decisions about the family, about your family structure, which is husband and wife, and then it will be kids down the road, you have to make those decisions with everyone in mind. You can't just make selfish decisions because you're the head of the household and that's what you want to do, so you have to follow me. That's not what that means. God wasn't that way. Jesus wasn't that way. When it came to godly things, those are the things that you need to lead your wife to. You have to lead your family as Christ led the church, as God led Christ. That's how you have to do this. Colossians 3, chapter 3, verse 19. We're going to jump into this one now. It says, husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Well, what does that mean? It's pretty simple. You are not to be rude or inconsiderate or mean or abusive or anything like that. You are to love your wife, again, as you would love yourself. So you cannot be harsh with your wife. You listen to them. You take their words into consideration. You come up as a team with any kind of discussions. But ultimately, the decisions lie upon you. Whether you make a good choice or a bad choice, the wife has the input to give to you to help you make a good decision. So you both work together and come up with a good decision. So don't be harsh with them. Actually listen to them. 1 Corinthians 7, verses 1 through 5. So this one is, we'll just jump into it here. It says, now for the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. But since sexual immorality is occurring, each man should have sexual relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourself to prayer. Then come together again, so Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So, during this time, there was a lot of sexual immorality going on, and we had to make this, or he had to make this clear as to what husbands and wives should do for one another. So this one, it says, sexual immorality is occurring. Again, that was common and unfortunate back then. But what it's saying here is that each man should have a sexual relation with his own wife, not with his wife and somebody else and somebody else. Remember, it's you leave and cleave and your two become one. So this means that You have a husband and a wife. Period. That's it. End of discussion. That's what it says here. You are not to have a husband and a wife and someone on the side and someone on the side and someone on the side, or you're not supposed to have a husband, wife. That's not how that works. God's design is for one man, one woman to come together and be as one. That's what it's saying here. You have to only have those sexual relations with your husband, and your wife should only have it, well, your sexual relations, the husbands with the wives, and the wives with the husband. That's it, period. And here it says the wife doesn't have authority of her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband doesn't have authority over his body, the wife does. So again, you two become one. You do not have the power to go, well, I'm married to her and I'm going to go ahead and do this with somebody else too. The wife has control over that portion of your body. Likewise, you have the same with your wife. Your wife can't go out and have any kind of relations with somebody else either. Again, the two become one flesh, one body. It says, do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent for a time, so that you may devote yourself to prayer. So sometimes you can have a sabbatical where you go and you get yourself closer to God, but you have to be careful with that, because we all have that desire, and you want to make sure that we focus that desire on our wife or our husband, and for wives, the husband, not with somebody else that just happens to be where you are or anything like that, because again, Satan would tempt you to have those kinds of sexual relations with somebody else. So you have to be very careful. You have to, again, devote yourself to your wife, and wives to your husbands. But you have to, if you do separate for a time for prayer, for a sabbatical, just be careful that you don't fall into that temptation and be with somebody else. So in Mark 10 verses 6 through 8, this here is where Jesus is speaking about this same subject. Here it says, but at the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. So that is a recurring theme throughout the entire Bible, that you leave your father and mother and you become one with your wife. The two become one flesh. So in the beginning, God created them male and female. His grand design was one man, one woman for each other. I know in the Old Testament there was a lot of multiple wives and everything, but that wasn't his design. And also he did say go out and be fruitful and multiply, but that's not what he meant. He didn't mean go out and be fruitful and multiply with every single woman that you see walking down the street. That's not what he meant. He meant be fruitful and multiply with the wife that you've been given, the wife of your youth, as it is called. Again, one man and one woman. Because of sin entering into the world, because of our selfish desires and our lack of self-control, we ruined everything into this world, and that's why there is sin. That's why there's this temptation. God's design was one man, one woman, and they were to be fruitful and multiply. That's what God meant by that, to go out into the earth and be fruitful and multiply. He meant with one man and one woman, not with multiple women or multiple men. That's not what he meant. That wasn't his design. We flawed the earth with that. So it says, therefore, whatever God has joined together, let no one separate. So when you are solid with your wife and wives are solid with their husband, it is you're bound together by not only the word and by God, that it is very difficult for anyone to separate what God has brought together. Now, if this bond weakens because you don't spend the time in the word and you don't spend time with your wife growing together spiritually and as well intimately together, that bond can weaken. And when that bond weakens, there becomes gaps. And in those gaps, the devil can bring in temptations which would lead you to sin. So you have to be very careful with that, because you don't want to separate what God has joined together. You don't want to let in that sin. So you have to be very, very careful with this. So this is going to be the part 1 of this. So that's the design for husbands. Tomorrow I'll go over the design for wives. God is very, very straightforward about what his design is for the role of the husband as well as the role of the wife. The list for the role of the husband is a bit larger because we are the head of the household. However, it doesn't put down the role of the wife at all. The wife does have their role to play, and when you two work together, that marriage is very, very blessed. So I hope this helped everybody who had any questions about God's design for husbands, and tomorrow we'll go over that for wives. So a couple updates for you. So my son's friend is doing better. He is healing. He's getting there. He's going to need rehab and all of that, but he is pretty much out of the intensive part of what happened to him. He's basically now in the recovery mode, and he'll get rehab and everything as he gets stronger and is able to get out of the hospital. But he is doing well, so thank you very much for those prayers. Please continue to keep praying for him. The other update is going to be for my uncle. He is actually still doing pretty bad. They don't think he'll be able to get 100% back to normal. Recap on that, he did have a stroke, and he did have a brain bleed, and I do believe that there might be something up with his liver. But as this goes along, as the test gets done, more and more will come out. But they were hopeful in getting him back to 100%. Now they're pushing towards 80%. So please continue to pray for him, pray for his recovery, and pray that his recovery is quick and that he regains anything that he may have lost, motor skills, all that stuff. So please continue to pray for them, and I would greatly appreciate that. Also, if anybody has any other prayers or anything that's going on in their life that they want me to pray about, please leave it in the comments. Let me know, and I will include that in the prayers. If you do give specifics, I will try to keep your information private. I will just generalize it, and but again, the power of prayer. So I won't put like your name out there, just like I haven't put my son's friend or my uncle's name out there. I will keep that kind of privacy for you, but getting people to pray for any kind of healing and recovery, again, like the one I did yesterday, there is great power in prayer. All right, so let's go ahead and pray out tonight, and I hope to see everybody back tomorrow for part 2 about the wife's role in the marriage. Lord, thank you for tonight. Thank you so much for this message. Thank you for making it clear to us what the role is for a husband and how the two become one. Please help us apply this to our everyday lives, and for those of us that are married or thinking about getting married, and help us to be able to treat each other with respect and with the love that we each deserve, and to follow your grand design for marriage. Help us to stick together like God intended, and let no one be able to separate us, including ourselves, from being able to separate us to allow sin and temptation to enter our lives. Lord, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for all of your blessings. Please continue to help my son's friend and my uncle heal and get better. Please be with them, put your healing touch on them, and help them to just become better with your grace and your healing power. Lord, thank you so much for everything that you've blessed us with for this entire week and today, and I look forward to seeing what you bless us with the rest of our lives. It's in your Son's name that I pray. Amen. All right, everybody. Thank you again. And I look forward to seeing everybody for part 2 tomorrow. Have a great night.